Hey everybody, I'm Jesse, producer of the No Quitting the Home Team podcast. I wanted to give a quick disclaimer in that while we hope anyone who listens would gain wisdom and insight from Dave and Renee's conversations, this is still a podcast intended for married couples, and to that end there will occasionally be dialogue around sexual intimacy and other related topics. So, for those of you who may be single and particularly sensitive to this subject matter, or those who may be listening at home or in the car with their kids around, we wanted to give you a heads up in advance so that you might continue listening at your own discretion.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 5 of No Quitting the Home Team. I'm Renee.
I'm Dave.
I'm Jesse.
Hey, on today's episode, we're going to talk about a marriage book that Renee and I went through when we were engaged many, many years ago. And cannot wait.
Many moons ago.
22, yeah, it was 23.
Woo.
Yeah.
It was super formative for us.
It was. It's really shaped us. It couldn't be any more different than our previous book that we reviewed. Literally, it couldn't be more different. So I'm excited to get into it and to highlight some of the real gems, not just in this book, but really that comes from the research of the guy who wrote it.
Are you going to talk about the first fight that it prompted in us?
Of course.
All right. Stay tuned.
So, Renee, how are you doing? How's marriage treating you right now?
Well, marriage is good, but how I'm really doing right this moment is
I really
skated past that.
Marriage.
Yeah, marriage, fine, whatever.
It's good, but what I really want to talk about is, if you've listened to previous episodes, we talked about my ice crunching, that I'm into ice crunching.
The oral fixation.
Yes,
of
and
ice crunching.
before this recording this episode, Dave said, "Do you want me to get you some water?" And I'm like, "Yes." And so usually he brings a water bottle, a chilled water bottle, but today he brought me ice and water. So I want everyone to appreciate this.
Mm-hmm. Let's hear it, honey. All episode.
Crunching. This is the only crunching I'm going to do in the microphone.
I was going to say, be kind to your editor.
Yeah, Jesse doesn't appreciate
That's
this.
it.
Me.
But seriously, we're good. We're starting off the school year. This week is always kind of a reset for us as far as routines and really just kind of remembering discipline in our family and getting up really early and limiting screens and
limiting wine drinkage.
Right. Yeah. It was just some of the summer routines so it's been great. It's good to kind of get back to feeling very, very productive again, and we're very tired.
Yes.
Will worked yesterday and got home at 10:45, which normally, I mean, Dave and I, if we're asleep by midnight, that's kind of standard for us. And he got home at 10:45, and no one in the house was awake.
We were all
cashed out.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's good though.
Yeah, great.
It's good. How are you?
You know, I'm feeling it.
Feeling what?
I'm feeling it. I'm just kind of, you go through seasons. Feeling marriage right now.
Gosh.
Like
You're feeling it.
No.
Oh dear.
We go through
This guy.
We go through seasons. They're, ebb and flow.
Yeah.
And I think it's good when you're kind of really feeling it, when it's not hard. Like, rather than diagnosing it or doing a postmortem on it or whatever, dissecting it, just be grateful.
Yeah.
And I don't want to think too hard about it. I just want to appreciate.
Just feel it.
Just appreciate that I'm just kind of feeling it right now.
All right.
So that you asked, and that's how I feel. I'm feeling it.
Jesse, are you feeling it?
We not feeling it. No, we're actually in a really good place right now, and it is it is a similar thing to that, where there's not we're still having like deep, fruitful conversation, but it's not about current goings on in our marriage. Like we're in a really good place. I will say, as we are recording this, I'm about an hour and a half away from going to the open house for my first grader, and that's kind of messing with my brain really bad. And so less on the marriage side, more just in our household. The fact that there is the pro of, hey, we are getting back to these rhythms, and he's going to be in school 5 days a week, and that is freeing in so many ways, but also like, holy crap, we have a first grader, and I remember all of first grade, good, bad, otherwise, like some very formative experiences from first grade that have shaped me into who I am. And so part of me is freaking out over that. But it's really exciting at the same time. So, but our marriage is great.
Good.
Very cool. So I'm going to give the name of the book, and then I'll let you kind of give a synopsis.
Sounds
so
good.
This book is, as Dave previously mentioned, a book that our pre-marriage psychologist,
Dr. French.
Dr. French, took us through, and was really, really helpful, for sort of at that phase for setting some patterns, I think.
Yes.
For our marriage. But it is called, and there has been a revised edition, shocker, 23 years later. It's called A Lasting Promise, The Christian Guide to Fighting for Your Marriage by Scott Stanley. Do you want me to list all the other contributors?
Nah.
Okay. Sorry, David, Savannah, and Milt.
Scott's the only one we're really concerned about here.
But we
his
went
RAs.
through the original edition, and there's been a revised edition in 2014. So I think if you decide to get it and go through it, I'd get the 2014, because I think it talks more about technology and some other things that have emerged as marriage killers since we went through it. But take it away.
Yeah. So in this segment of the podcast, we're going back and forth between Christian books and secular books on marriage. What's so great about this book is that Scott Stanley, who is a researcher on marriage and family at the University of Denver,
Local plug.
a great scholar, a longtime dedicated follower of Jesus, and a renowned expert on marriage nationally. He's fascinating in that he will write this book, A Lasting Promise, that is an explicit Christian book on marriage, and he'll write another book alongside of it that is secular in its language and reception, but is no less sort of lauded. He's sort of.
So is this a bothy?
It is a both.
Is it a Christian and a non-Christian
But
book?
what makes it work within the secular world is precisely his Christian insights.
Yeah. Does
But that's not why
does the non-Christian version have a different title?
Yeah, I think it's. Oh man,
Is it Fighting for Your Marriage?
maybe building your marriage. I forget.
Okay.
I forget.
You could probably find it if you just
Yeah,
search
just-
up Scott Stanley.
Scott Stanley books on marriage, something like that. But his secular books have been featured on Oprah, on New York Times, been quoted in all the like major kind of national publications. So his probably biggest claim to fame is that his sort of primary insight that he and his fellow researchers sort of gained, called the speaker listener technique, that we'll talk about in a second. In the 90s, there, for a brief period of time, there was actually a tax credit that you could get on your marriage license if you went through his material.
Wow. I didn't know that.
So for a while, it was under George W. Bush's, in his administration, you could get money back from your marriage license if you did an approved counseling program. That the bedrock of that was Scott Stanley's work. So this guy is legit. He's local. He loves Jesus, and his stuff has worked to really strengthen thousands of marriages over the years. And we've done some research stuff with him and some outreaches with him in the past. So he's become a friend of fellowship over the years. But
So what's his deal?
so here's the deal. In this book, A Lasting Promise, he frames it up by doing a really simple, insightful, but simple analysis on Genesis 2 and Genesis 3. So if you go back to Keller's work, he's doing something very similar. He says that marriage was designed by God to create this state that he calls oneness. And oneness is this state of being naked and unashamed. So naked, meaning that you are totally exposed, warts and all. There's nothing hidden. There's nothing you feel like you have to hide about yourself to another. So you can be totally exposed where you are and know that you can be accepted. So naked and unashamed. And that oneness in marriage isn't conformity to become like the other, but it's actually a state where you can be precisely different and yet totally accepted by the other. So it maintains this safety and the bedrock of intimacy that he says in his biblical analysis, but then as a psychologist, says that kind of all humans long for. To be, I mean, who doesn't want to be totally known
And totally loved.
and totally loved?
Yeah.
And so that's oneness.
So
And
he
then-
just describes this concept, kind of
Yes.
unpacks this idea.
And basically it's like it's universal kind of human phenomenon. This is what we want. Who doesn't want to have all of their idiosyncratic sort of behaviors and things to be seen, so you don't have to hide from anything.
Yeah. Someone who loves the warts.
Yes. And know that when I'm with you, it's the safest place for me to be.
Yeah.
So unashamed.
Yep.
So he basically just highlights what's in Genesis 2. This is what God made marriage for. So isn't that what we all want? And this is his insight into a lot of the secular stuff. And people are like, oh yeah, well, of course, this is what I want. And then he introduces Genesis 3. Genesis 3, sin enters into the picture. And Adam and Eve, who have this naked and unashamed relationship, once they eat of the fruit of the tree, the knowledge of good and evil, they decide they want to do life independently from God. The immediate consequence of that, he highlights, that Adam and Eve, even before they hide from God, the very first thing they do is they put on loincloths. The first thing they do was to look at each other and to see, where am I different than you? Oh, here and here. So they immediately cover up the parts of their bodies that are different. And then after that, they hide from God. And then they're sort of the implications of the fall become clear. But what he highlights is that once selfishness enters into any relationship, this innate desire we have to be naked and unashamed becomes an impossible reality, because we are now self-protective.
Right.
So I'm going to cover up where I'm different, and wherever I'm different, I might weaponize or utilize to get what I want out of you and your difference. Like, you have some things that are interesting to me, but the pathway to it isn't to be naked and ashamed. The pathway is to weaponize or utilize differences so that I can get what I want out of you. So, sort of perversion of desire, self-protection, selective disclosure to get what I want, all begin to sort of be introduced into the marriage relationship. And then he just basically says that kind of all of human history has like been a fleshing out of these patterns that destroy what we all really want, which is this idea of oneness. So that's sort of the biblical analysis. Now, this is he then sort of switches hats. It's sort of his theologian hat. Then he takes the hat off a little bit, and then he puts on his researcher hat. And then he says, when you do an analysis of marriages that break up, this is what you'll find.
Analysis, like statistical.
It was a long-term, I
Yep.
think he had you have to research to see exactly what it is, but 500, I think it was 500 couples over the course of 20 years.
Yeah.
So a legit, like, long-term study. He said, what you'll find is that couples that have long-term success and marital satisfaction, if you ask them, what is it that's the secret sauce of your relationship, you'll find that they will say a vast sort of array of different
things. Yep.
So it's really diverse. What people say, what makes marriage work, is actually really diverse. However, the couples that divorce and end up with a lot of dissatisfaction, the things they point to that caused problems in their relationship, those things aren't diverse. That there are actually a sort of a shocking sort of similarity to what destroys oneness. But there are diverse things couples get into that instill oneness.
That's produces a lot of freedom, because it's like couples can look very different. We can
Right.
and still flourish.
Exactly. It's really beautiful, and it's God's
if we can
creative.
if we can hedge against the few things that seem to demolish relationships.
Exactly. So
So what are they?
So here are the four things that destroy oneness. Here they are. So all you have to do is avoid these things.
All right.
And then you'll experience
Then you'll be
marital
happily
bliss.
ever after.
We don't have to have a podcast after
I was
this.
going to say,
get a pen
this
and
is
piece
putting
of
us out of a
paper.
job.
Yeah. So the first thing is escalation. That's simply like you say something that sets me off. I respond to that thing, not with patience or understanding, but with equal amounts of energy that try to trigger you, and then you say something that try to hurts me, and then it just escalates. And so
Until the plate flies across the kitchen.
exactly. So couples get into these patterns of escalation where fights become intense.
Yep.
And inevitably someone, their feelings get hurt. And real emotional scarring happens after a while. And then couples end up in a big trouble. So escalation, that's one. Second one is invalidation, which is I tell you my experience, what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, and then the spouse says something that makes that not mean anything, or that doesn't count, or that what I said or experience isn't really as important.
True to reality.
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
And that a pattern of invalidation, as you might expect, leaves a spouse feeling like they're not important or that they don't matter, and then all manner of dysfunction sort of unfolds from there. But invalidation, huge. Third is negative interpretations, also known as mind reading, which is I see that you've gone through these experiences, I observe that you say these things, and I'm going to assume motives. I'm going to assume that I know why this happened in the way that it did, and interpret it in a way that is non-generous. We talked about this in 1 Corinthians 13. Part of the way we show love to one another is that love believes all things, which is really the opposite of this.
Right.
This is when you believe what's worse about each other. And I don't know why couples get into this pattern, but they do. But nothing, hardly anything sets couples off or puts a marriage relationship in a bad place than feeling like what I've just done has been interpreted in the worst possible light.
Yeah.
Huge problems happen from that. So negative interpretation. And then finally, withdrawal and avoidance.
Yeah. Is that
So-
sort of the culmination of the previous three.
For sure.
Yeah, although it can be different. Like it can be the origin of withdrawal and avoidance might just be differences of personality initially, but then you just kind of do what feels right whenever there is any tension whatsoever. So avoidance doesn't necessarily mean that you're angry at each other or that you have been invalidated. It just may mean I don't want to talk about something that I think you might disagree with me on, and it's just better for me not to think about it.
Yeah.
Or to be in another room.
Yep.
And based on family of origin, avoidance, withdrawal may just be second nature.
Yeah.
So those are like the 4 patterns that destroy oneness. Now the problem with all 4 of those is that when you begin to press into them, you see that they're actually part of our broken human nature. So the issue isn't how do we kind of hedge, like how can we learn not to do these things? Because
it's the crack is there.
it's already there. It already exists. It's already a part of the human story, and we're all part of that story. So it's really identifying which 1 or 2 or 3 of these do we already do or have a propensity to, and how can we sort of learn to minimize the damage of what's already done, and then begin to the long, difficult process of building new habits, building new patterns that aren't intuitive to us.
Right.
And so that then becomes the thing, which is sort of the second half of the book is really getting into
The how-to.
And how do you build this new habit that is going against what is often intuitive in a relationship that, if unchecked, will cause a marriage, if not to lead to divorce, it will cause it to lead to
unhappiness,
dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the setup. Now, what's the solution? Well, the solution is
just stop it.
Stop it. Quit it.
Stop doing those things. Just
quit
stop it.
Withdrawal and avoidance, and just lovingly engage. Yeah. Cut it out. Now, for Scott and for his research, the solution is to learn what is called the speaker-listener technique. Now, if for those of you who've done marriage or pre-marriage counseling with me, you know all about this already because I've forced you.
Deeply ingrained in the culture of Fellowship Denver
Church. Yes, it is. And the reason why is because way back when Renee and I were engaged, Dr. French sat us down and he forced us to do the speaker-listener technique. And so it became part of our relationship, part of our culture of our marriage, and so I've just wanted to pass it on to FTC family.
You guys want to give us an example?
Yeah. Actually, Renee, why don't you tell them the first time we did this speaker listening technique? How did that
even
turn
better.
Well, I grew up my dad was an attorney, and in our family we argued for fun, which was not Dave's environment.
No. If there was arguing in my family, it means the world is about to end.
Yep. And you just say as much as you can, as loud as you can, as quickly as you can to get your point across, to be right.
The Gentry and Cowan households. The Venn diagram is just a circle.
It's a circle. So, and generally feelings aren't hurt. Would you say?
Yeah,
it's a competitive sport.
Yeah, if they 100%. Are, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter,
yeah.
Right? So, subsequently, my listening skills weren't the best. my talking and being right skills were better than my ability to listen.
Right.
So, he had us identify a current conflict, which I'm trying to remember. Was it about a car?
It was about the car. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your Camry. I don't remember what about.
I don't either. There's something we were trying to decide whether to sell it or keep it. I don't even remember.
I don't think so.
But he had us discuss the issue first without doing this technique. And very quickly, I was loud and I was certain what I was saying was right.
Yes.
And Dave diminished and was quiet.
I was just sort of in the fetal position in the corner of the office.
And he looked at Dr. French and said, "Do you see? Do you see how this goes? This is how this goes."
Yep. And then
So-
we started, even when we started doing the technique back and forth, you were so sharp with it.
Yeah.
And then he was like, I remember him going, he stopped us. And he's like, well, you guys see how it works. And I said, no, I don't, Dr. French.
Because I don't get to step out.
Unless we just carry you around with us in our pocket to referee this. So our first exposure to it was kind of a stumbling
Yes.
experience. But then
To which our psychologist just cashed out
did.
without helping us resolve the issue in the argument.
Right. But the seed had been planted though.
Yeah.
And so
All joking aside, talk about what
Yeah, walk us
the
through it.
details of
okay,
it.
here it is. So this is an active listening exercise.
So this to be utilized when you get to the point, and we all know that point in our individual relationships when things are starting to escalate.
Yes.
Or there's palpable tension.
Yes.
Or there's a barrier. Like we all know once it crosses over from normal daily interaction to that point.
Yes. And what he wants to instill in couples is confidence that no matter what the topic is, I know I can be heard and understood by my spouse. That's actually the issue he's trying to solve. He's not trying to bring us a particular solution to whatever it is you're fighting about. That can happen and often does, but that's not what destroys marriages. What destroys marriages is the lack of confidence that I could ever be understood.
Yep. So he brings in a physical object, and he called it
He calls it the floor.
the floor. And I think, what did he grab? Was it a vase or something?
No, he told us not to have things like vases.
That they're breakable, right? Right.
Yeah, things that are breakable or that are hard and are sharp.
Could be
edged.
weaponized. Yes.
He recommended teddy bears, a pillow,
Right.
a shoe if you have to.
But in the beginning, it's a very rigid parameters on who can speak and who can't speak.
Yes. So
So the person who has the floor,
who's holding the
who's
object?
physically holding the object.
Speaking podium.
Yes.
Speaking to
Which I think our
speaking
floor
stick
was a variety of different objects. They're the one who can introduce information into the conversation.
Yes.
So, Dave, I'm so mad at you because I want to sell the car, whatever the issue is. And then only one person can speak at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm rambling on about what I'm mad about. And then Dave can say, I'd like to respond.
Yep. And if you're not holding the floor, your sole purpose in life is to understand what your spouse is saying.
So you respond and you repeat back to them what they just said.
What they just said.
So say something completely off in left field from what I
So
said.
let's say, yeah. So you're mad at me because you hate driving.
That's not what I said. I said, I'm mad at you because you want to sell this car that's paid for and buy something else, and I don't want to.
Okay.
So what are you, the only thing you're able to respond with?
What I hear you saying is that you're upset because I want to sell this car that's paid for and I want to buy an e-bike.
You get the picture.
Yeah.
So then if Dave wanted to introduce new information into the conversation, he has to get the floor.
Right. I have to ask for it. So what's beautiful about having the floor is that whoever has the floor actually has the power in the conversation. And so Renee, she introduced the topic she wants to talk about.
And I can say, no, I'm not finished. I'm
Right.
not giving you the floor yet.
Because
you're not replying to me in what I'm saying to you. You're
Yeah.
not hearing what I'm saying.
Or you could say, actually, you did repeat back to me what I said, but now that I hear it repeated back to me, that's not really what upsets me. Mm-hmm. what I'm actually upset about is blah, 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 blah. And then we repeat the cycle. Okay, Renee, what I hear you saying is that you're really upset about blah, 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 blah. So initially, it can go back and forth like this for some time.
And it can feel really clunky, and it can feel very slow.
Yes, mechanicals. It is a machine, and it is unnatural. And yet, part of the genius of it is the slowness and the mechanism lowers the temperature.
Yeah.
So that you can begin to think straight again about the issue
Yep.
that has so much heat to it.
And it forced me to actually listen because the first couple of times we did it, I was just thinking what I was going to say to you. I wasn't actually listening to a word you were saying.
Right.
So then I wasn't able to articulate anything back to you. So it was a great realization on my part that I actually don't listen. So it taught me how, there are multiple skills you learn in it, but it taught me how to listen.
Yes. And which then increased my hope and my confidence that if I have an issue, I know Renee can understand it.
Yeah.
And we can talk through it without sharp verbal jabs or feeling like this is a complicated jousting or fencing exercise where she's a master and I'm I'm just holding a little flimsy stick and she has a sharp sword. Therefore, I'm going to avoid having hard conversations. No, this created a safe place for us to have these conversations where I know I could be heard.
Yeah.
And so, so you have your say, I repeat back to you, to your satisfaction, what did you say? And then I ask for the floor. And then I can then say, here's the deal with the car, blah, 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 blah. Here's what I'm thinking, blah, blah, blah. And then since you don't have the floor.
All I can say is, so what I'm hearing you say is this.
Yes.
And surprisingly, there's more clarification that needs to happen than you think on most issues.
It's shocking.
It's shocking.
Yeah.
It is shocking.
It's shocking. And it's so relationally beautiful whenever you feel like, she gets it. Mm-hmm. Like we connected here. Mm-hmm. He finally understands what I'm saying. And then you go back and forth, and then the solution often becomes self-evident in the process. It's not like it's this super complicated process afterwards to find what the solution is. It kind of it doesn't necessarily solve itself, but often it does.
And sometimes the solution is we can agree to disagree right now, and we'll table this and revisit it later.
Yeah.
But it diffuses the emotional volatility.
Yes.
Even if there's no actual resolution for that particular issue.
Right.
It's always been a tremendous de-escalation tool in our household.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're starting to work on it with the boys.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
great.
there you go.
That's brilliant.
After a while, if you're committed to doing it, our therapist said, do this for 1 year. Just commit to doing it in a year. We did. And I think maybe I can count on one hand how many times we did it after that year. Mm-hmm. Not because we didn't need to do it. It's that it actually became more intuitive.
Yeah. You actually learn to listen.
Yeah.
And you internalize the process without having to have the physical prompt.
Just like any habit formation
Yep.
device.
Yeah.
I don't know if we've ever actually had the physical, and maybe it would have helped this ingrain itself earlier, solidified a little earlier had we actually, had a pillow or whatever. But it's that exact thing. It's we don't really move on until we know that the other is understood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think having in the beginning, having an identified object just helps your spouse know when you're starting it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because if you have conflict and you don't want to say much anyway, you pick it up, it initiates the process without you having to say, honey, let's sit down. We need to talk. There's so much that prevents you from starting these conversations. It was just an easy way to initiate the process.
Yes. And we had for our couples here, I tell them to pre-decide we're going to commit to doing this for a year.
Mm-hmm.
So I do the same thing that our counselor did us. And so they've already made the decision that this is something we're going to do.
Yeah.
So whenever you pick up the floor, it's not a decision of whether or not we're going to do it. We've already made that decision.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you may decide, let's do it right here and now, or okay,
I'm not
ready. Let's do it tomorrow. But you've already made the decision. We're going to do it. So again, the idea is to increase confidence.
Yeah.
You can be understood in your marriage. That's the big point.
And I think it engenders the idea that we're both going to try, because it is hard. It's a hard process, and it's to slow down. It communicates both, because I do think, as you talked about counseling people over the years, often one person's in and one person's not. Right. And you can't force one person to be present in their relationship if they're not there.
Right.
And if you both are participating in this pretty laborious process, it says we're both here.
It does.
And I think just that part communicates a commitment and a presence in your relationship that is huge.
Right. It facilitates this triangulation where now it's me and you, and we're both working together to talk about the thing that's the problem. And the speaker-listener technique can help to triangulate and crystallize what the thing is we're trying to solve.
Mm-hmm.
Before the speaker-listener technique, whatever the problem is inevitably gets wound into the spouse.
Right.
So
there's lots of accusations.
Yeah,
you're always
it's
did
you
this. Yep.
It's you that. You make me do this.
Mm-hmm.
And the speaker-listener technique helps to extract the issue from the person.
Yeah.
You can see it both together. Now we can work together on the thing.
Yeah.
And that can be a really beautiful process.
Yeah. When I was reading the reviews on Amazon of this book, I was just curious what people were saying. And a lot of them would say something to the tune of, it may sound simple, but just do it. You'll be shocked. And I think that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Like what we're talking about sounds like, how could that be that transformative?
Yeah.
But just try it. And I think you'll be surprised how productive and helpful it is.
Yep. Yeah, it is. And it's, can this be used wrongly? Yes. I mean, I think like any marriage tool, if you put it in a super toxic relationship or an abusive relationship, then this tool, like any other otherwise helpful marriage technique, can be applied in a terrible way.
Yeah.
But assuming a quote unquote normative marriage relationship where most people they're sort of for each other, there's at least a bottom, there's sort of baseline level of like emotional maturity from both partners, then this could be enormously helpful and really help punch through some difficult seasons for a marriage.
Yep.
So a thing we had to work through, and I'm sure we are not out of the norm here. Shell is very much a verbal processor in the moment. How she works through, like she needs to work through it out loud in the moment. And I am the opposite of that. I don't want to go into that conversation feeling unprepared, feeling like I haven't had time to sort through what I'm feeling, right? Yep. And so where we ran into trouble pretty early was I would want, if there was conflict, she's relatively, I say relatively, she would laugh if she heard that. She is highly conflict averse in that she wants reconciliation quickly, right? That's the household she was raised in, right? Like if similar thing. If there was fighting happening
We're just
in her
switched
household,
in our relationship. We're switched.
Yeah, exactly. If there was fighting in her household, it was like completely destabilizing.
Yep.
Whereas with us, it was like, yeah, that's just, we call that dinner.
Yep.
You know, we call that dinner time. And so early on, what would happen is if there was conflict, she would want to resolve it and talk it out immediately. And we didn't have as clear language for this, but I would bolt because I'm like, I need to work through this because I don't know what I'm going to say right now.
Yeah.
And that's not helpful.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how to process. So I just need to go work this out, and then we can come back and we can talk about it. But what would happen is the more I would go to do that, the more she would feel the need to press in.
Chase
the more
you
she would
down.
do that, the
Yep.
great, right? And so what would you say to young couples specifically who are working through how like they deal with conflict differently?
Yep.
How can they implement this in a way that both people feel cared for and seen and heard?
Yep. 48-hour rule. 48 hours. So once one of you picks up the floor, initiates a conversation, you have 48 hours to do it. So ideally you can deal with it that day. But some people, Jesse, like you articulated, they're not going to be in a place emotionally to grapple with that in a helpful way.
Yeah.
Now, I would say they're probably like that because it's been handled poorly growing up, and there's a lot of wounds there that caused the avoidance. And so I do like the 40-hour rule just to respect that difference, though. So you know, hey, this isn't going to be swept under the rug. We have 2 days. So it doesn't have to be tomorrow. But then the day after that, we're going to have to deal with this eventually. So that's a couple of days to process.
Would that have been enough time?
Absolutely. And this is where, and to your point, like it's not always quite this linear for people, but that was exactly our experience. As we learned, like, hey, okay, we are going to get to this. I just can't get to it right now, but we will. And then over time, you start to, and I don't know if it's just being, leaning into differentiation or whatever, but like, it's much easier for us to have those conversations sooner.
Yeah. I was going to say the same thing. And for us, it just, the time it took us to resolve issues just started shrinking.
Yes.
So early on,
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm pouting for a week, or I'm maybe not, that's maybe hyperbolic, but we resolve things much quicker and with much less hurt, much less time because of this process.
Totally. You just feel like, hey, we can, the fear that prevents meaningful conversation, that fear isn't there as much anymore. So you have greater confidence that, hey, we can grapple with this right now without thinking, oh, if I just make a couple of wrong moves here, we're going to get set back a week or 2 weeks or whatever. You don't have that quite as much.
And I do think there's generally one, not necessarily the man or the woman, but someone's usually has a stronger personality. And I think often the dynamic develops where the person without the stronger personality just shrinks.
Yep.
And I think this just cuts through that.
It does.
Which is so helpful for probably most couples.
Yeah, and the way that looked for us is we had and I think we've mentioned this before on the podcast, but to your point of triangulation, Dave, what we've discovered is that as time goes on, it's less of like an equilateral triangle where it's like, here's the issue, here's you, here's me. Like the we, like, it's closer and closer together, and over time it's much more of a, like, we're a unified team against the problem.
Yes.
It becomes
Yep,
much
totally.
less about, like, I'm warring against you and against this thing, and it's like, the piece of advice that was given to us is like, hey, don't try to win the argument. It's not worth it, because at the end of the day, what you're doing is like, it's like, okay, you won the argument. Congratulations. You successfully defeated your teammate. And so it's like, the more you can recognize that, like, hey, it's not you versus me. It's actually us versus this thing that's trying to divide us. So how can we better war against the thing? And that's what it became for us. And part of the reason why I think we can get to the heart of these issues a lot faster is we kind of skip that whole step where sometimes it's still, we'll still pick fights with one another, but most of the time, if something gets weird, we're like, whoa, what is that? That's not us. What is that? And so we can, in a much better way, unify quickly and mobilize against whatever it is that's trying to divide us.
Totally. He actually gets into this where the me, you, we Venn diagram, and the we is its own personality. Mm-hmm. It's like its own kind of creation.
Yeah.
And it has to mature just how the you and the me matured. And he says it's kind of like, imagine, someone going through puberty and that discomfort that you have when everything's changing. That's what the we goes through.
Yep.
In a relationship. So you're having to sort of define how is it that we, the combination of two of us together as a couple, how do we actually interact and define ourselves and deal with these issues? And it takes trial and error to do it. So, so this speaker listener technique though is brilliant and has worked in so many couples at Fellowship Denver. It's pretty cool to see.
Do you feel like it has any other insight, or is that what we want to leave people with?
I think that's what I want to leave people with.
Okay.
I mean,
the book's great, and evidently the revised version, the 2014 version, has a lot of anecdotal stories about particular couples, which could be helpful to kind of hear individual stories and different personalities, how it plays out. So if this sounds interesting, I think it would definitely be worth getting and reading.
Yeah, and he continues to research. I think he's he may be emeritus research professor at Denver Seminary now. I'm not.
No, it was DU.
What did I say?
Denver Seminary.
Oh yeah, Denver University.
University of Denver.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and but he's still doing it. He's still doing the research. So, I'd actually like to interact with him again after this episode to see what's cooking, because he's always doing fresh research.
Cool. So what do you give this one?
Oh, this is a 9. I mean, this is tried and true.
Yeah.
This will help. It's not a silver bullet, but it for a lot of couples it will be a defining moment for improving your marriage. So, an unreserved affirmation on this book and what he has to say.
Yeah. I feel like I'm kind of, when someone asks you to rank your children, you're like, they're a 10. Of course they're not, but right.
Depends on the day.
Yeah, right. But I feel like this has been with us for so long. It's like, I can't not give it a 10.
Yeah.
So I'm giving it a 10.
Give it a 10. Home run.
Yeah, I mean, this was the foundation of the idea for us of fight well, like learn to fight well.
Yeah,
right? And this is the core of that. So yeah, it's similar. It's like the glowingest of glowing reviews for sure.
Great. All right, check
Fantastic.
it out, everyone.
All right, surprise question today is me.
Yo, here we go.
And I feel like I often come with really heavy questions, so I'm not today.
Oh, you're not?
No.
I've actually been dreading this, so I'm really happy.
We'll see.
Yeah.
TBD.
So, I feel like in the course of our relationship, we have annually probably gotten away together.
Yes.
And we used to pair it with an academic conference, and that hasn't happened in the last couple of years. I think COVID kind of threw a wrench in that. So, and we're kind of in the throes of.
And by the way, he doesn't want to just get away with your spouse to an academic conference.
Right?
Yeah, that sounds steamy, but it really was amazing. So anyway.
So we're planning, like, we're making all these college visits, and I feel like we're doing lots of planning as a family. Mm-hmm. But I'm wondering, when and where is the next time and place that we're going to get away together? Oh. What do you hope we could do, and what do you think we could make happen?
Well,
when and where can we go, just you and me?
The first thing that comes to mind is just the dashed hopes of Hawaii.
I know.
And so we've had 2 trips scheduled, booked, hotel and flight. And twice we've had to cancel for COVID related reasons. Yeah. And I don't know if I've recovered from that. Honestly, like
I felt that.
so much.
I felt that.
that was going to be our 20th wedding anniversary trip. And then it's like, oh, well, 21st, and it didn't happen. And then this year for our anniversary,
You were hiking with Ian.
yeah. So I just felt like those hopes were dashed. So I appreciate this question because I think I need to kind of get back on the horse and like, hey, let's do something special again. So the when, the where.
And it doesn't have to be, I'm not like holding you to this, but maybe just a hope. Maybe just something, a desire to throw out there that may or may not happen.
Well, I would, want it to happen. I think as a baby step towards going to Hawaii, I still have that in mind. That's still like my dream. I want to explore a new city with you.
Okay.
So I know we've talked about going to Vancouver, going to even Santa Fe, that's close, but we've never explored Santa Fe together. Like to me, that sounds like a blast. It's not that far away, and we could, spend 3 days in Santa Fe, and I think would just have the time of our lives. So maybe that's it. Maybe that's it's not overly complicated.
Yep.
We could work it out.
So
and
when?
So I say, let's go to Santa Fe. Let's go. What's Santa Fe like in like February? Like I'm thinking terrible weather time.
It's
It's
cold.
warm. Is it
Cold.
cold?
I mean,
No, it's mountainous.
I know
isn't
it's
it?
mountainous, but
yeah, I mean,
It's probably not as cold as here.
Yeah, we would often go for spring break and like ski Santa Fe.
Yeah, so we're snow. We've got snow.
okay. Well then, let's do it earlier. I say let's go in the fall sometime.
Maybe when all 3 kids are at the church retreat. September 9th through the 11th.
Hey,
not
now.
not to mention specific dates.
That sounds amazing. Let's do it. September 9th through 11th? Okay. I know I'm preaching on September 11th.
Are you?
That's
Well,
Sunday.
sounds like you're gonna make some phone calls.
Okay. To be determined.
Michael, Hunter.
Yeah, who can I
To be
switch
determined.
with?
Okay.
But that's a great question.
All right. All right, next section.
All right. Renee, how can I make your day better?
So many of mine seem to revolve around housework.
And I think that's perfect. I mean, it's your life.
Reasonable.
It's your life that is in the focus in terms of making it better.
So we have this routine in our family that everybody stays and cleans up the kitchen after dinner. And it's been great, except this year we'll propose something different because there are a lot of cleaners in the kitchen. And inevitably you're standing in front of a drawer that someone else needs to open when there's 5 of you in our small kitchen, right?
Yeah.
And people get in each other's way and people get frustrated. So Will was like, hey, what if 2 people are in the kitchen and then the other 3 are doing other things? Or Will suggested taking the night off, but Dave was like, why don't we just, while the 2 are in the kitchen, we just do other little things around the house.
Pick it up around the house.
Or like switch the laundry out or put the laundry away or just little things.
Taking the trash out.
Or tidying the backyard or whatever. Just little, you're working on the house until the people in the kitchen are done.
Yep.
And we've decided that I'm all-time quarterback with the dishes because I can just do them fast. And it shrinks our time in half. So we've been doing this and it has been phenomenal because the kitchen still is perfectly clean by the time I go to bed, but then there's other things that are done as well.
Yeah.
That bleed into the next day. So how you can make my day better is owning the responsibility of keeping this going in this form.
Done. Done. I can totally do that.
Forever.
In perpetuity. Okay. How about this year?
This year.
This school year.
Okay, this school year.
Okay, yeah, I could totally do that. And I agree that it's kind of been a home run so far.
Yeah. And maybe even telling people what to do.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing dishes real quick, and for you could be like, hey, the Legos need to be tidied, or we'll go clean up your, like, you owning the assigning of the tasks that need to be
Outside
done.
of the kitchen.
Yep.
Done.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
How did I ask you?
You asked.
How can I make?
I
your,
asked you.
Yeah. How can I make your day better?
Okay.
He's like, I didn't expect you to ask.
I did. So how can you make my day better? Okay. In the evening, we've wanted to kind of, now that we're sort of back in the fall routine, we've talked about sort of rekindling our evening reading routine,
Yep.
and we haven't done that yet.
Yep.
So I think it would make my day better if when the easiest thing for me to do is just turn the TV on.
Right.
Is for you maybe just to put the remote away and just have that book out.
Okay.
And that will just, I think,
Help
would
usher you into that time.
Yes. And
Okay.
then it's like, okay, we can transition now into recreational reading, which after a long day, a lot of my day often is reading,
Yep.
grading, or whatever,
Yep.
writing. Sometimes recreational reading
Yep.
doesn't immediately sound fun,
Yep.
although I always love it once we get into it.
Yep.
So that would make my day better if at the end of the long day, I just know, hey, we're going to be recreational reading, and that will kind of, I think something will click in me.
Okay. I can do that.
Great.
All right. Last but certainly not least,
Certainly not.
what I'm into right now. And I'm going to start because it is in direct opposition to what you just asked me to do.
Oh, okay.
I know. So we have been watching Legacy, the true story of the LA Lakers, and it is phenomenal.
It really is good.
And so we've been doing it in the evenings.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can read after when we're done. see how
We have just been watching one episode, which is just an hour. That still gives us some reading time. And the boys are into it. And it's a well-established fact that we are sports fans and huge basketball fans, both play basketball. And the amount of things I'm learning about basketball, namely last night, who knew NBA teams did not have dancers until the Lakers. With the Lakers owner, who is a bit of a playboy, he brought entertainment to the NBA. And so there were no dancers until the Laker girls. And then it became a ubiquitous phenomenon in the NBA. Anyway,
and now they're phasing out again because it turns out it can be problematic.
Yes.
Yeah.
But and evidently it was done in response to other more sensationalized versions of the Lakers, which we haven't seen. But it's a 10-part docuseries, and it is so fascinating. I think even if you don't like sports. So we're watching it with our boys, and they're into it, and I'm into it.
Yeah.
I'm into that right now. What about you?
Great. Do you feel like I'm good to not do mine?
You're good. Okay.
No,
We're fine.
Just do it. Yeah, we're fine.
We got about 8 minutes.
Are you sure? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was okay to.
No,
I can drive you. I can drive you too.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Drop it off.
Yeah.
Drop me off.
We're talking. Yeah.
Lovely. Okay. Then let me think. Hang on a second. Let me just.
We'll
I
let
had
Jesse.
thought-
Jesse,
yeah.
what are you into? Do you have anything?
Yes. Oh, you want specifics? No. It's come to my attention that my thing I'm into last week was rushed and weird, and that's because I felt rushed and weird. I don't like talking about myself, so I'm going to give a very clear, pointed follow-up on last week with a point of action, and then I'm going to get into the other thing I'm into. My band, A Place for Owls. You're hearing this on... This is releasing on Friday, September 2nd. We released our first full-length album, which is also called A Place for Owls, self-titled. We released it this previous Tuesday, August 30th. It's live. You can look for it anywhere you get music.
Go see it. Go get it.
And tonight, September 2nd, at Globe Hall in Denver, we're playing an album release show. Come watch us play. Come party. It's going to be a ton of fun. and listen to our music, thank you so much.
Awesome.
Hey, we're all into it. We're into it in our household.
I was going to say,
We're into it.
Yes, I feel the love from the Moreland household. The thing I'm into, we're just going to stay on the literature thing. I am reading out loud The Hobbit to my oldest child, who is 6, and seeing the wonder and excitement.
It's the best.
Seeing him discover this world, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. We read the Riddles in the Dark chapter where Bilbo has the riddle battle with Gollum underneath the mountain. And for 3 days following that, Jacob was trying to phrase everything in riddles. And
That's amazing.
things like that.
Good.
It's brilliant. So the thing I'm into is getting lost in fiction.
Yes.
If you have a kid, do that with your kid. If not, fiction is great.
Yep.
Go bury your face in a book
Yep.
and lose yourself, immerse yourself in a world that is not your own.
Here, here.
Beautiful.
All right. Thanks for
right.
listening. Thanks for indulging our delve into marriage books. We appreciate you and praying for you guys.
Yep.
Have a good day.
Bye.
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 Let your